I'm sorry.
All right, we're ready to go, Liz.
I'm sorry. Live.
Sure, Liz, we're ready.
3, 2, go.
Good morning, huddlers. There is no better place to be on a Friday morning than here. This is the place where you get to hone your leadership skills, enhance your ability to create an enterprise that takes your legacy generations beyond you. So thank you for being here and welcome. I have a question for my dear friend, Tara. Good morning, Tara. Tell me, what's the best air to breathe if you want to be rich?
The air right here. I don't know.
That would be a perfect answer, except it's millionaire.
Oh! Oh man, I have to give that one like A-. That's pretty good.
Terrible. That's terrible, sorry. Terrible.
Well, you've all heard the term emotional intelligence. Well, this morning I'm excited to have Dr. Maiysha in the house to introduce you to two new terms, emotional fluency and psychological flexibility. But we're not going to get into that yet. All of that is designed to equip you with what you need to, again, enhance your leadership skills and be the leader you want to be right now. And before we dive into that, I have a few questions for my favorite people. Good morning, Chase.
Grand Rising, sir.
Where are you?
I am right here in the present moment, my friend, right here.
Thank you, Chase, and welcome. Gio, what time is it and who are you going to hug today?
The time is now, and today I'm going to hug a client of mine.
Lucky client, lucky client. Tara, tell me, how are you and what are you grateful for?
Oh, I am exactly the way I say I am. And this morning I find myself intrigued. And I am grateful for, in that same vein, I am grateful for our ability to continue to learn.
That is awesome, Tara. Stay intrigued and get right up on the edge of your seats as I introduce to you a really good friend of mine, Dr. Maiysha Clairborne. What I'm about to say about her will spell out her credentials. It will spell out, the degrees she has and all that good stuff. But more importantly, this morning, I want you to meet the woman, the being behind all of that. My friend Maiysha Clairborne is an integrative physician, trainer in Neurolinguistic Programming, Hypnosis and Time Line Therapy, and founder of her company, the Mind ReMapping Academy. Through her coaching and training, Dr. Clairborne teaches individuals and organizations trauma-informed communication by helping leaders eliminate negative thinking, faulty belief patterns, and emotional trauma so they can become more trauma responsive in their interactions with others. Maiysha is a graduate of Emory University, completing her medical degree at Morehouse School of Medicine and her family residency at Florida Hospital. In addition to gracing the TEDx Asheville stage in 2022, she has delivered trainings in arenas such as the International Conference on Physician Health, WellMed Physician Conference in Greece, and Women in Medicine. And she serves as faculty facilitator for the ACGME Equity Project. Now, need I say more, Maiysha? But I want you to say more. With all of that, Could you take a moment and introduce us to Maiysha Clairborne? What makes you you?
Thank you. First of all, thank you, Sorrel, for having me. And, I think at the core, who I am is a healer and someone who is committed to transforming the next generation. I'm a mom. That is, that's me. I am mother, and I'm a mom to an 8-year-old boy, but I consider myself mother to all children. And the work I do, I am very clear, will be realized after I am gone. And so that's why I get up in the morning. That's why I do the work that I do, so that my son and his friends and my nieces and nephews, so that they can live in a better world.
I love that. And if you were to tell us something personal about Maiysha beyond being a mom, that maybe in a setting like this, you'd be somewhat reluctant to share, what would you say?
I don't know that there's anything that I'm reluctant to share.
Ah.
But what I will share is that I am a trauma survivor, and I utilize that to teach other people how to honor their emotions, honor their history, and utilize it to inspire others.
Yeah. Is it appropriate for you to be specific about the trauma you endured?
I not without breaking anonymity of another.
Okay. I appreciate that.
Yes.
So thank you for being here with us, and welcome to the Daily Huddle family. And so let's dive right into the question. And today's question is, what do emotional fluency and psychological flexibility make available in our everyday lives as leaders? And, there's a lot to unpack there. Emotional fluency. I'd love to begin by asking you to tell us what emotional fluency is not, as an access to begin to look at what emotional fluency is. So what is it not?
Well, what emotional fluency is not, it's not this simply being in our emotions. It's not simply, I would say, vomiting our emotions. Right? It is not, it's not simply communicating emotion. It's more than that. It's deeper than that.
And as I was looking at the term, I'm thinking in terms of emotional intelligence. And in the term emotional intelligence, there's a term intelligent. And in my country, in Haiti, when somebody calls you intelligent, it's bordering on insulting you and accusing you of being someone who's really adept at manipulating others, using situations to be in your favor. So would you also say that emotional fluency is not a strategy?
Absolutely. I would absolutely say that. And I love what you said about the emotional intelligence, because I think that the word intelligence also brings a connotation that there are those who are intelligent and unintelligent, and that is binary thinking. And fluency implies a spectrum. It implies a journey. As in, when you learn a language, there are levels of fluency.
So dive right into it. So now the question is, what is emotional fluency? And unpack that for us.
Emotional fluency, as I create it, is the ability to be on this journey of becoming aware and having the flexibility to dance and understand one's own emotion, respond to another's emotion, and even become, when I say emotionally aware, like there is a language that our body speaks specifically to us, and understanding what that is inside of us so that we can connect with others and their communication, their nonverbal communication of emotion.
So in the context of being a leader and increasing my effectiveness as a leader, how does emotional fluency contribute to that?
Well, what it does is it helps us to connect to others as leaders. You know, when, what is the quote by, I think it's by Maya Angelou, people won't remember what you say, but they remember how you made them feel. Yeah. And so that is that part of that emotional fluency, being able to connect. When you're able to connect with another and see, when I can see myself in you and see you and me, then it opens up dialogue. It opens up the possibility of creating together. And that's really what leadership, what embodies leadership, being able to lead and follow, dance, create together.
Yeah. So when you talk about emotional fluency as a spectrum, as opposed to a binary world, I'm imagining the space inside of which leaders, people who are listening, can evolve, take a journey. So if you were to characterize for us the beginning of the journey and the end of the journey and what's in between. So how does someone go about practicing becoming fluent emotionally?
I think the first thing is this thing that people call mindfulness. It's awareness. It is being in your own body and being aware of, well, what is the emotion that I'm feeling now? And what are the gradations of emotion that happened before that emotion? Like that very keen awareness of oneself is the beginning. You know, when you begin to learn the language, you have to listen to the language first. And such in emotional fluency, we have to listen to our own bodies and our own set of emotions. And then we can begin to label them, right? We begin to label them, just like you begin to learn vocabulary and label vocabulary. And then when we begin to label and be honest about what those emotions are, because many people, they are not honest. You want to push that emotion down, but label and be honest, then to be able to effectively communicate that emotion with others without causing harm.
Yeah.
Right? Without causing harm. And it's similar. Learning a language, you learn to listen, you learn to distinguish, become aware, and then you learn to communicate with others, listen to others and decode their language, decode another's emotional being.
Yeah. So
that would be the journey that I would say.
Putting it right on the court in a scenario where, as a leader, I am, you are, someone's interacting with another, and you're practicing being fluent. So if you could put us right there in that moment and play out a scenario for us, what would that look like? What does it look like to be emotionally fluent in the real world as I'm living?
I had an interaction. I'll put it on the court in this way.
Yeah.
I had an interaction with a mortgage consultant, and we were having a conversation, and he was having a rough moment, let's just say. And he raised his voice at me. He spoke to me in a way that was harmful. And in that moment, before I was to react, I had to notice what was going on in my body, notice what I wanted to say, and then regulate myself in that moment. Meaning,
So what did you notice in your body?
I noticed this pressure in my chest, this rising lump in my throat, and this tension in my hands, like a balling up in my hands. And in my mind, it was like, I know he didn't. See what he just said to me, right? And then in that moment, I had to breathe and then recognize that there was some emotion over there. Because if I were just to react, it'd be like trauma reacting to trauma, like just reaction to reaction. And to really create like what something is happening over there with you, like not to assume or mind read, but something is happening over there with you that is uncomfortable, that you don't like. What's going on? What is going on? And then he was able to share with me his tough day and say, you know, I apologize for speaking to you in this way. It wasn't about you. And I was able to share how I felt like, wow, that really hurt and made me a little bit angry. And I get where you're coming from, but let's not do that again.
So being emotionally fluent, I can say now gives you the opportunity to be with someone else, like really, because instead of attacking or defending, you are able to create an opening for him to develop where he is, a bit of emotional fluency without making him, condemning him in any way.
Yeah.
So perfect practice, we've got a few more minutes. Psychological flexibility in the context of the whole question. What is psychological flexibility? And why did you juxtapose emotional fluency and psychological flexibility in the question the way you did?
Well, psychological flexibility is the ability to be bendy with our thinking. Bendy with our thinking. That's the best way that I can create it.
It's a new term.
And well, I make up new terms all the time. and the reason I juxtapose the two is because they feed into each other. That ability to be mentally bendy, or to be bendy with our thinking and listening, plays into our ability to, or is predicated on our ability to be able to recognize where we are emotionally in any moment. And so the two are interconnected.
Yeah. So in that same scenario with the person you had earlier, where did psychological flexibility come into play? Where did you find yourself being bendy, or at least generating being bendy?
What I found is that my immediate thought process of being defensive, and what I could say if I had been, like 10 years before, and being able to, in the moment, really see, no, something is going on over there with him. So to be able to be with my own emotions and my own thoughts in the moment, but then to be able to say, no, let me rethink this. What's going on over there with him that is impacting his communication with me?
Yeah.
And then to be able to communicate that, be flexible in the moment and dance inside of that moment to communicate what was going on.
Oh, that's awesome, Maiysha. I'm hearing in the background a specific commitment that you have as a leader. And before we open it up for questions, I'd love for you to verbalize that. In the context of being emotionally fluent and psychologically flexible, there's an intention that I'm hearing you out to fulfill in every interaction. What is that?
That people be whole and complete.
You can drop the mic on that one. So let's open it up for questions, and we'll begin with Shira. Shira, go ahead.
Is Shira Cherie by chance?
That must be Cherie, yes.
Hi, Cherie.
Greetings. I really, I've learned that skill in terms of being emotionally flexible, I think, and the intelligence of it. I wanted to ask about the expectations of others to do the same, because that's where I run into trouble. Like, I'll be the one that say, take that step back. But when I'm having my little meltdown moment, then it becomes like a back and forth, doesn't go well.
I love that question. I think that when we are really dancing in, we can be also unattached from what the other is going to do. And so what I can say about that is that when we are really dancing in and flexible and communicating from that space of commitment to others being whole and complete, number one, their response does begin to open up, even if it doesn't in that moment. But we can understand that we've planted a seed. And then we can also take care of ourselves, like in the moment. If we're bumping up against a brick wall and a person is immobile, we can pull back and take care of ourselves. However, it is not useful to have the expectation that just because we are interacting in that emotionally fluent or intelligent way that another will do the same. It's useful to remain unattached in that moment. And that's where we make the biggest difference, when we're unattached.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cherie, and forgive me for calling you by another name. And Dr. Maiysha, while we're waiting for another question, you and I were speaking. Well, no, Tara has one. Let's let Tara go first.
Well, that's not necessary. I tell you, I love this conversation. It's so much in my wheelhouse. What I'm not really getting is, tell me the connection between what you are teaching and sharing and trauma. Like, how are those two things aligned? I'm not getting that connection.
Well, when we understand that really 100% of people experience trauma in some way, whether it's primary trauma, like immediate experience, witnessed experience, or vicarious experience, when we understand that everyone is impacted by trauma, then we can dance with our own emotions, we can honor others' emotions, and we can communicate in a way which we would call trauma informed, that could dive into a whole other conversation, but we could call that trauma informed or trauma sensitive way. That's the way they interconnect.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Makes perfect sense.
Thank you, Tara, for the astute question. Gio?
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. And so I had another question, but now I'm inclined to follow up on what Tara was creating with you, Maiysha. So kind of, I'm making something up. I may have missed something in the conversation. So I'm making something up. Your area of concentration, or where you concentrate and provide service or contribution or coaching, is for people who are professional and they're looking to communicate better and have more, if you will, assertiveness and power in their speaking by understanding their trauma in some degree, or is it mainly for people who know they have trauma and they can see the wall in their life constantly, creating a limitation in their ability to be free in their profession?
Both. So there are people who may not really get the world of trauma and may not even recognize that they're impacted, that they have they're impacted and they have trauma responses. They may not get that. And I bring to them the understanding of what trauma is, and that 100% of people are impacted in some way.
Oh, got
right.
it.
So there's that aspect of it. And I do a lot of this in organizations and corporations when we talk about when we're talking about, equity and inclusion and belonging. And then there are people who absolutely know that they have trauma and that it is impeding their ability to perform in the world, to be with their family, to be with the people in their lives, to be leaders. And they want to learn how to navigate that space for themselves and communicate through the challenging moments.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Can I ask my question? That was Tara's fault because she confused me.
I'll take that.
Thank you, Gio. Thank you.
I want to ask my question, sir. Hold on.
Oh, you want to ask your question? Go ahead.
No. Can I ask a question and then Sorrel, you ask your question and then Maiysha answers both?
No, actually, I was looking to have Mr. Peter Augustus and Stan speak as well. That's all. Go ahead and ask your question.
Oh, me?
Yes.
Oh, well, okay, thank you. So, Maiysha, quick question. So, do you have as you're guiding people in a conversation, or through a process, do you have a turning point or the occurring of a turning point where you can see, all right, you got enough tools to distinguish your past and your emotions. Now let's create some strength so you can start getting over it, rather than continue to maximize the pain and going to this down rabbit hole for the rest of my life about the aspect that I call trauma. How do you find that turning point so that people begin to get over it? Yeah.
Well,
Maybe that's not the best term, you know.
right. First, I will reframe "get over it" to
Emotional.
heal from it.
Heal
right?
from it, yeah.
Heal from it, right? So yes, there's the way that we create is it's understanding that we are impacted by trauma, not necessarily going into each person's, trauma story. That is not my area of expertise. That is for therapists. And the way I do work is to acknowledge, like this is the way I teach, acknowledge that we do have trauma. You may know your trauma story, you may not. And if you discover, okay, this is what has happened, then you may need to go work with that. And here are also tools for you to manage yourself, for you to regulate, for you to move past and heal. There are techniques that I teach. Now this is the work that I do in my individual NLP coach hypnosis trainings, right? These are the tools that you can go and work with yourself and others to be able to help heal from trauma.
Got it. I am clear that get over it is not an NLP term.
Thank you, Gio. Thank you, Maiysha. Peter, you had your hand up. Do you still have a question?
Yeah, good morning, guys. Thanks, Dr. C, for that expose. But my takeaway is kind of consistent with what one of the tenets of the Daily Huddle is, where are you? Present. The story you told about the mortgage person and the way they came at you, I can identify sometimes. I bleed over I have 4 women in the house. I'm the only guy. And sometimes I'm being vilified that I'm not seeing it their way, which I probably won't be able to. But it's just the aspect of being present at the time and trying to utilize and reframe some of the things that you're saying in a way that they will understand. So the emotional fluency part of it, being present is the most important thing, because if you're aware at the time of where you are and what you're saying, then you can probably try to modulate it. So that's the takeaway for me. Thanks for sharing that.
Thanks for that.
Thank you for sharing that, Peter. We'll close the question rounds out with you, Stan the man.
Oops.
Stan, you're on mute.
Thank you so much, Maiysha, for the conversation, for that information. Would you say that as a general rule, it's best for us all, anytime we feel something rising up in our communication, right, with someone, that it's best for us to start from the base that, it's probably something going on with that person or something going on with me that I'm feeling this way now. Maybe I should kind of hold back, letting these emotions escalate until I can get more information? Because maybe I shouldn't take this personally. So is that a good place to always start?
It is a great place to start, to take a step back, what I like to call come into the observer position for a moment, take a step back and say something else is going on. And depending on where your emotions are, like if you feel like you're centered enough to be able to name it, naming is a super useful tool. Something is happening here. And you may not even know specifically what that thing is, but something is happening here. I'm experiencing this. It seems like you're experiencing that. What's going on? So when you can step back and you notice where you are now, if you're not in the space, because our activation, like our activation responses, some are involuntary, and sometimes we're not in the space to do that, then it may be, you know what? Something's happening. I need to step away. And then let's come back and talk about what's going on, because this is not working. Right? But it is very useful to recognize, okay, something's happening here, something's happening there. We need to take a step back.
Thank you, Stan. Thank you.
Thank you,
Dr.
Maiysha.
Maiysha, you mentioned earlier that, it almost sounded as if the primary job of a leader in being effective is to be connected.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd love for you to end on this note. What is it to be connected to another? How do you know when you're connected or not?
Sometimes the connectedness is an unspoken thing. And sometimes it is something that, we recognize in ourselves. Like you have the tingly feeling, you walk into a room and you see the person across from the room. Maybe you walk into the room where, you are, I'll give you an example. I was in Peru in 2013 with my girlfriend, and we were walking in Machu Picchu, and we saw another Black woman walking. We were the only two Black women. We saw another Black woman walking from across the room, and there was this look and acknowledgement, and we locked eyes, and I could feel it in my body, and I could see it in her face. And then there was this, we walked toward each other and hugged, and it was like we never saw each other. We never had seen each other before in our lives, but we hugged as if we had known each other for years.
Yeah.
It was unspoken. It was acknowledged, right? I acknowledged her, she acknowledged me. We saw ourselves in each other, and then we felt it in our bones, and we were able to communicate that connectedness.
Oh my God. And perhaps in being effective as a leader, there's cultivating where I am and where you are, the capacity to actually allow that kind of connection to happen, even in environments where one could say, well, that's inappropriate. It's a corporate environment. It's this, it's that. Maiysha, it was so great having you here.
So wonderful.
So great to be emotionally fluent and psychologically flexible are two of the aspects of being a leader that are critical. And thank you for introducing us to those terms. Thank you for introducing us to the space and the world of it. I'd love to have you back. And Maiysha runs a podcast. Tell us a little bit about the podcast before we go.
The podcast is called The Black Mind Garden. And this, it really serves as a ground for me to either solo or with wonderful guests, such as perhaps you, Sorrel, and perhaps you, Giovanni. And
oh, we're
to have
on.
these really delicious dialogues about the world, this world of emotional fluency and mental flexibility, and in various areas of life. So we talk from parenting to leadership to personality tendencies to relationships and intimacy. We cover all types of conversations, but all inside of this world of being trauma informed, being emotionally fluent, and being mentally and psychologically flexible. And so the Black Mind Garden is the podcast. It's on any of your favorite podcast platforms.
Perfect, perfect. Well, it's always tough to let go. I'd love for this to be another hour, right? But we're not going to do that. And we are going to say goodbye to you, the listeners, and the ones participating right here live. Until Monday morning, the Daily Huddle's on every weekday morning from 9 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. So, and you're welcome always. So we'll end on this note. Go out there and love, whether or not you feel like it. Stress less. Eat nothing but trees and leaves and beans and then if you want to have a burger every now and then, go for it. Sleep, give, and move your body. And at every turn, check your assumptions. Check your assumptions. I'm putting Dr. Maiysha's contact information in the chat. Go ahead and grab it. Stay connected with Dr. Maiysha. This is our show. We'll see you on Monday.
That was so enlightening. Thank you, Dr. Clairborne.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. CC,
Thank
bye
you,
now.
Cece.
Such a wonderful conversation.
Have a great